actually happened. And the prosecutor, Binger, described the mob in Kenosha that was burning the city as a, quote, crowd full of heroes, unquote, who tried to stop an active shooter in Kyle Rittenhouse. Yes, a crowd full of heroes. And the judge dismissed the gun charge against Rittenhouse. Tom Fitton commented, the dismissal of the gun charge is further evidence of the corrupt and political prosecution of Rittenhouse. The gun law in question quite obviously didn't apply to Rittenhouse's circumstances, so there was no good faith basis to bring it. Hashtag malicious prosecution. And we learned from the Daily Mail, under your black robes of justice, you wear a white robe of the Klan. Daily Mail reveals vile emails sent to judge in Kyle Rittenhouse case, including threats to spit directly into his face and payback against his children. The Daily Mail has reviewed hundreds of offensive communications sent to Judge Bruce Schroeder, and today can reveal the extraordinary outpouring of vitriol that the high-profile trial has inspired. One email sent Wednesday reads simply, wow, way to name a white skinhead hothead to be a judge. No wonder they burned down your city. I don't think that I would call Judge Schroeder a skinhead. He is bald, which is something that happens to a lot of older men. Here's another message sent. Subject Kyle. So I can't call the wounded men victims, says your judge. One day, hope his kids become victims to the most heinous homicide known to man. So he feels the pain, and we can call his kids not victims, but bastards, and descendant of a expletive deleted family and father figure. Racist bastard. God will pay you back for your statement. They are. Perhaps not a native English speaker. And we have a story here from Fox News. What will Kenosha look like if Rittenhouse is acquitted? This is from Lisa Benetton. Kenosha, Wisconsin locals told Fox News they expect protests if Kyle Rittenhouse is acquitted, but hope demonstrators remain peaceful and are kept under control. You know, when I started in journalism, one of the first things I was told was to never call people locals, and I was given an easy way to remember it. Rhymes with yokels. There will be more society disruption, upset. There will probably be some more demonstrations. One woman told Fox News, if he's completely exonerated, I think there will be protests, another local said. Rittenhouse was charged with 2 counts of homicide for shooting Joseph Rosenbaum, 36, and Anthony Huber, 26, and faces an attempted first-degree intentional homicide charge for shooting Gage Grosskreutz. Rittenhouse, who was 17 at the time, has argued that he fired his weapon in self-defense during the August 25th, 2020 unrest in Kenosha following the police shooting of Jacob Blade. Oh, so that's what they're calling it now? Unrest? People are worried we're going to have the same problem we had burning the city down, one resident told Fox News, but he felt the city has everything under control since Kenosha had gone through this before, and there's 500 National Guards on standby. Amy Perry, owner of a Straub's flower cart, said she assumed there would be protests if Rittenhouse is acquitted, knowing the actions of the people, but she similarly said, I know Kenosha is ready for them. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers authorized roughly 500 National Guard troops to support local partners in ensuring public safety in conjunction with hundreds of officers from volunteering law enforcement agencies. Evers said the state continues to be in close contact with partners at the local level to help ensure the state provides support and resources to help keep the Kenosha community and greater area safe. I urge folks who are otherwise not from the area to please respect the community, and he encouraged any demonstrators to protest peacefully. Well, we shall see, won't we? And let's go to the chat. Coachalango. Hey, chat, sorry I don't tell you when KMG goes up his roof and uses a broken mirror from the next door room on a Sunday night watching the Buffalo Bills in some speakeasy to communicate to Chad Chadson. Hello to Dan. Chogokin 666, Dawn from Beyond. David the Gnome. British American, lock her up. Well, that's a start anyway. Metal Mike says, I saw the Rittenhouse video. That young man is a hero. Well, one certainly has to admire his accuracy and trigger discipline. Dionysus says, this is phony outrage. Nobody cares for the people that were killed. Seriously, are people weeping over a dead pedophile? Hello to Don Willis. David says, I'm proud to see that KMG overcame the inner journalist to become the man he is today. What else do we have here? Don Willis, greetings and blessings to you, KMG, on a Monday. Yes. Chogokin 666 asks a question many people have. Why didn't he call the guard, during the riot? Kontiki Roulette, hello. I'm just going to lie in bed and let Kevin's soothing tones wash over me. British American says, Wellington, in a rage after his troops plundering prevented the pursuit of a defeated French army in Spain, called British soldiers the scum of the earth. That's the origin of that phrase. Yes, I'm reminded that the Iron Duke, when Harriet Wilson, who I'd mentioned previously on this live stream, told him that she was coming out with her memoirs, and she was clearly looking for blackmail money, he responded famously, publish and be damned. And that is the origin of that phrase. So, things are definitely happening. Oh, before I get into that, let's talk about Hillary Clinton. Things are moving on Russiagate. This is by William Jacobson at Legal Insurrection. There is a limit to what we are able to cover. We just don't have the resources to cover everything that deserves covering. And one of the things that deserved covering in more depth was the Clinton connection to the phony Steele dossier that led to years of Russian collusion media coverage designed to freeze the Trump administration. We covered it. It's not that we ignored it, but it should have been a more major focus. The short story previously covered was that the Steele dossier was bought and paid for by the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, with holier-than-thou Democrat election lawyer Mark Elias playing a role as intermediary. The whole thing was an interference in our election process of epic proportions, and the Clinton crime family was behind it. Now it's all coming out as a result of the slow but steady investigation by John Durham. The indictment of a Clinton company lawyer and recently of another Democrat operative involved with the Steele dossier indicate the onion is being peeled back. Deep inside, if Durham ever gets there, we will find some surprises. Here's my bet. People connected to Obama were involved, and Obama almost certainly knew, but he probably kept several layers of people between himself and the dirty work like he always did. In a major development, the rats at the Washington Post are fleeing the sinking ship. Here's a headline from the Post. The Washington Post removes parts of two stories regarding the Steele dossier. And Legal Insurrection Jacobson called this an extraordinary announcement. The Washington Post Friday took the unusual step of correcting and removing large portions of two articles published in March 2017 and February 2019 that had identified a Belarusian American businessman as a key source of the Steele dossier, a collection of largely unverified reports that claimed the Russian government had compromising information about then-candidate Donald Trump. The newspaper's executive editor, Sally Busby, said the Post could no longer stand by the accuracy of those elements of the story. It had identified businessman Sergei Millian as Source D, the unnamed figure who passed on the most salacious allegation in the dossier to its principal author, former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele. The story's headline was amended, sections identifying Millian as the source were removed, and an accompanying video summarizing the article was eliminated. An editor's note explaining the changes was added. Other stories that made the same assertion were corrected as well. Source D, according to the dossier, alleged that Russian intelligence had learned that Trump had hired Russian prostitutes to defile a Moscow hotel room once occupied by President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, and possessed a video recording of the incident. The allegation, which the dossier said was confirmed by a second person described as Source E, has never been substantiated. The Washington Post made pains to highlight the Clinton role. Steele's dossier consisted of raw information and unconfirmed tips from unidentified sources, which he compiled as part of a political opposition research project for an investigative firm working on behalf of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. Though Steele shared it with the FBI, its contents remained largely unknown and unpublicized until 2 months after the 2016 election, when a leaked copy was published by BuzzFeed News. Trump has repeatedly denounced the dossier as false, framing it as the centerpiece of a malicious effort financed by his political opponents to damage him. The Post reassessment follows the indictment on November 4th of Igor Danchenko, a Russian-American analyst and researcher who helped Steele compile the dossier. Danchenko was indicted on charges that he repeatedly lied to the FBI about where and how he got information that he allegedly gave to Steele for the dossier. The February 2019 Post story detailed Milyan's involvement in some of Trump's business activities. It was headlined, "Sergei Milyan, identified as an unwitting source for the Steele dossier, sought proximity to Trump's world in 2016. The indictment secured by Durham on November the 4th suggests, but doesn't explicitly assert, that Danchenko may have gotten his information about the hotel encounter not from Milyan, but from a Democratic Party operative with longstanding ties to Hillary Clinton. The indictment doesn't name the executive by name, but he has been identified as Charles Dolan Jr. by Dolan's attorney, Ralph D. Martin, who otherwise declined to comment because Dolan is a witness in an ongoing case. The damage Hillary Clinton, Democrat disinformation operatives, and their media helpers did to this country is immeasurable. I agree with this sentiment. Bring them down. Bring them all down. And we have more on this from Margot Cleveland at The Federalist. Why Special Counsel John Durham subpoenaed the Brookings Institution. Brookings was ground zero for the Russian collusion hoax, with many key staff embroiled in the damaging lie that Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin to steal the 2016 election. In April 2021, the Brookings Institution publicly confirmed that Special Counsel John Durham had subpoenaed records from the DC-based left-wing think tank in December 2020. The friendly reporters at Time magazine framed the subpoena as limited to the decades-old employment record of former Brookings staffer Igor Danchenko. Last week's indictment of Danchenko, however, provides a perfect reminder that Brookings was ground zero for the Russia collusion hoax, with many key staff embroiled in the damaging lie that Trump colluded with Putin to steal the 2016 election. But wait a minute here. Haven't we been told repeatedly that it's impossible to steal an American election? I suppose that depends on who's making the accusations. On Thursday last, Durham charged Danchenko in a 5-count indictment with lying to the FBI during the agents questioning him, related to his role as Christopher Steele's primary subsource for the notorious dossier that enabled Obama administration's surveillance of the Trump campaign. The details in the 39-page speaking indictment provide further evidence that Durham's team has been steadily unraveling the mess of Spygate, with the most recent thread leading to the Clinton camp and the left-leaning Brooks Institution. While the indictment charged Danchenko with lying to the FBI about Sergei Milyan serving as a subsource for the dossier, it was Danchenko's allegedly false claim that he never communicated with PR Executive 1 that proves more significant for purposes of uncovering the truth behind the Russia conspiracy hoax. Shortly after the indictment was unsealed, attorney Ralph Martin confirmed that his client, Charles Dolan Jr., was the unnamed PR Executive 1. The revelation that Danchenko used Dolan as a subsource for the dossier is significant because of Dolan's longtime connections to the Clintons and the Democrat Party, and because none of what appears to have been sourced to Dolan was true, including one claim of the dossier that Dolan invented. So with the Danchenko indictment, the public now knows that a Clinton crony in the person of Dolan fed Danchenko false information that Danchenko then presented to Steele as intel. Steele then regurgitated Danchenko's claims in the Clinton campaign-funded dossier the former MI6 agent provided the FBI. The indictment's discussion of the Dolan-Danchenko relationship revealed another detail that, while unimportant for purposes of the charged crimes, proved significant to understand the interrelationship of the many actors pushing the Russian collusion hoax, namely how Danchenko and Nuland met. According to the indictment, in February 2016, a Brookings Institution employee, Fiona Hill, introduced Danchenko to Nuland. Danchenko knew Hill as he had also worked for the think tank as a Russian analyst from about 2005 to 2010. During that time, as the Inspector General's report on FISA abuse would later reveal, Danchenko was under investigation for being a potential Russian agent. Significantly, Hill also introduced Danchenko to Steele, a longtime friend of hers, in around 2010. Following Hill's introduction of Danchenko and Steele, Steele's firm Orbis hired Danchenko as a contractor for various work, ultimately resulting in the Danchenko serving as the primary subsource for the Steele dossier. Hill also communicated with Steele about his work on the dossier, meeting with him in October 2016 while she still worked for the Brookings Institution. Hill continued to speak with Steele into 2017 after she had left Brookings and accepted a position in the Trump administration with the National Security Council. Hill was not the only Brookings employee connected to the Russia collusion hoax. As Chuck Ross detailed for the Daily Caller more than a year ago, testimony by Steele in the defamation case filed against him in the United Kingdom by Alexei Gubarev, a Russian tech executive, established that the president of the Brookings Institution at the time, Strobe Talbot, called Steele out of the blue in August 2016 asking about Steele's anti-Trump project. Like Nuland, Talbot's Clinton crony credentials were impressive. He served as a Deputy Secretary of State under President Clinton and on the State Department's Foreign Affairs Advisory Board at the time Hillary Clinton served as Secretary of State. Clinton's top friend at the Brookings Institution would speak with Steele again. The lead lawyer in the UK defamation case against Steele stated that Steele telephoned Talbot on the 2nd or 3rd November 2016, and Talbot asked for copies of the memoranda to discuss with John Kerry and other officials at the State Department. Fusion GPS later provided a copy of the dossier to Talbot. Then, after Trump's surprise 2016 defeat of Hillary, according to the lawyer taking on Steele, Steele wrote to the Brookings president on November 12, 2016 about the dossier, quote, "Dear Strobe, I know this is not straightforward, but we need to discuss the package we delivered to you the other week, and the sooner the better. What you thought of it, what you did with it, how we both should handle it, and the issues it highlights going forward, etc." Unquote. Talbot later provided Hill, who was at the State Department under the Trump administration, a copy of the dossier one day before BuzzFeed published it. Steele's testimony in the UK defamation case revealed further connections to the Brookings Institution, with Steele claiming either Susan Rice, who was Barack Obama's national security advisor at the time, or Victoria Nuland, Obama's Assistant Secretary of State, had briefed Talbot on the work Steele was doing. In his testimony, Steele noted Rice and Nuland had been Talbot's colleagues at Brookings. Now, you might remember the name Victoria Nuland because she was the prime mover behind the illegal coup d'etat in the Ukraine. And yes, she is a very well-connected person. She is married to super neocon Robert Kagan. Yes. A spokeswoman for Rice later told the Daily Caller it was utterly and completely false that Rice had spoken with Talbot regarding Steele's investigation. Conversely, Nuland, who had served as the chief of staff for Talbot when the latter had served as Deputy Secretary of State in the Bill Clinton administration, declined the Daily Caller's request for comment. While Nuland's relationship with Talbot and Brookings dated back to at least the 1990s during the Clinton administration, it remained fresh in 2016 and beyond. Just 2 years before the Steele dossier came on the scene, Nuland and her husband, Robert Kagan, who served as a senior fellow at Brookings, were described as the ultimate American power couple. Following Trump's election, Nuland joined Brookings as a non-resident scholar, although she is now back officially working for Democrats as the Biden administration's number 3 diplomat. Perhaps she'll somehow manage to maneuver the United States into a war with Russia over Ukraine. So we have a Substack essay by Aaron Mate, who is a left-winger, actually. Russiagate has no rock bottom. The indictment of the Steele dossier's key source newly humiliates the Clinton campaign, the FBI, and the U.S. media. It did not seem possible for the Steele dossier, the collection of Trump-Russia conspiracy theories funded by the Clinton campaign, hyped by the U.S. media establishment, and tapped by the FBI for surveillance and investigative leads, to get more embarrassing for all those involved. But the indictment by Special Counsel John Durham of Steele's key source, Igor Danchenko, offers 39 pages of new evidence that Russiagate, after 5 years of failed innuendo, debunked bombshells, and humiliating revelations, has no rock bottom. In late 2019, Danchenko humiliated the Steele dossier's powerful champions when it emerged that he had informed the FBI in a January 2017 interview that corroboration for the Steele dossier's key claims was zero. This was for good reason. Instead of speaking to Kremlin officials, as Steele had claimed, Danchenko told FBI agents that he had instead relied on booze-fueled hearsay in his conversations with friends. The most salacious claim in the Steele dossier, I'm not going to repeat it. I'm sure most of you have heard it. But it never made any sense because Donald Trump is a known germophobe. Mate continues, now it gets worse. Durham's indictment reveals that one of Danchenko's key subsources was not even Russian, but a U.S. public relations executive with deep ties to none other than Bill and Hillary Clinton. Another purported subsource, Sergei Milyan, isn't Russian, he's from Belarus, but was the former head of the Russian-American Chamber of Commerce. But there is one problem. Contrary to what Danchenko told the FBI, he and Milyan never even spoke. The indictment also suggests that not only was the FBI aware in 2017 that the Steele dossier was fraudulent, but that its key source, Danchenko, was lying to them. But instead of informing the public and indicting Steele's source, the FBI continued the Trump-Russia investigation and tapped the dossier for it. Anonymous intelligence officials even told the public that Steele's farcical claims were bearing out. Durham's indictment offers new details on how the farce came to be. And I think we have one more on this. Yes, Victor Davis Hanson touches on this in his essay in American Greatness, Why the Left Always Projects. The left is addicted to projection, the psychopolitical syndrome of attributing all of one's own sins to one's opponents. The woke apparently do this out of some Freudian effort to square the circle of their own guilt or sense of privilege by fobbing off their own fearful realities onto others. It is the atheist version of confession or medieval penance. In addition, in the spirit of always being on the offense, wokeists know that those who slander do so most successfully when they lodge exactly those charges most familiar and applicable to themselves. Collusion is also a good example of the absurdities of leftist projection. Hillary Clinton and the Democratic establishment simply concocted the charge that Donald Trump's presidential campaign was colluding with the Russians based on rumors and lies collected by an incompetent and long-retired British left-wing spook, a couple of Clinton cronies at home and abroad, a washed-up Wall Street Journal reporter, and various Hillary functionaries seated among Beltway bureaucracies, media megaphones, and law firms. Remember, it was Team Hillary after the 2016 election that rounded up celebrities to cut commercials urging the electors not to honor their state's popular votes. Then we went to the surrogate Jill Stein's lawsuits challenging voting machine counting. And finally, during the transition and Trump presidency, Hillary bragged of the new maquis résistance that spread her fake Steele Clinton dossier throughout the State Department, FBI, CIA, and Justice Department. There is a slight chance that John Durham may eventually work his way up to this largely illegal effort, from Hillary's minions to those in her inner circle. Again, we shall see. Oh, yes. Did you know that Kamala Harris is apparently on the outs? Hilarious story. just a few hours ago in the Daily Mail by Jeff Earl and Rob Crilly. No rift to see here. Biden and Harris walk out of the White House side by side and hug to try and quash claims of a rift to sign the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill in front of 800 lawmakers. VP Kamala Harris lavished praise on President Joe Biden Monday, thanking him for the work he did to secure a $1 trillion infrastructure bill amid reports that the relationship had soured. They walked out onto the South Lawn together in a show of unity before hugging in front of about 800 guests. Hours earlier, a string of insiders told CNN Biden was distancing himself from Harris because of her sliding poll numbers while the VP felt isolated. Officials tried to shrug off the claims during the day, and Harris offered her boss the thanks of a grateful nation. From the very start, you welcomed Democrats, Independents, and Republicans to meet with us in the Oval Office. You welcomed ideas. You welcomed debate, all in the service of getting this bill done, said Harris before Biden signed the bill into law. And here is what I know to be true, Mr. President. You are equal parts believer and builder. And because you are, we are all better off. On behalf of our nation, thank you, Mr. President. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democratic Senator Kristen Sinema, and Republican Senator Rob Portman were on the stage as they signed the infrastructure bill to invest in broadband, bridges, roads, and ports. And there's a picture of the two with Kamala Harris. So she has this weird look on her face, which I guess is, in her home world, this is what they believe in a human smile looks like. So the story goes that that Biden's team have been saying nasty things about Kamala privately, and I guess CNN was one of the beneficiaries of this. Why is Kamala so unpopular? Approval rating of 28%. She's never been popular. You remember she ran for president in 2020? No, she didn't actually, because she suspended her campaign before 2020. She didn't even make it to the Iowa caucus. Come on. Not popular. Oh, but you see, this is it's historic choice. What? The first black or the first Asian, so she's a threefer, vice president. America had a black president for 8 years. How is this significant? Again, from the Mail, Joe Biden's relationship with Kamala Harris is in crisis, with her staff furious that she is being sidelined, while the president's team are increasingly frustrated by how she is playing with the American public. Harris's approval rating has plunged even further than Biden's in recent months, with rumors swirling that the president is considering appointing her to the Supreme Court as a backdoor method of selecting a new VP. So this is how much respect Joe Biden has for the Supreme Court of the United States, that Kamala Harris's reward for being a dud as vice president is to be made a member of the Supreme Court. There are no vacancies on the Supreme Court, to the best of my knowledge, which suggests that Biden indeed intends to pack the court. She and her top aides are meanwhile frustrated with Biden for handing her no-win issues like the border crisis, White House insiders told CNN. They cited how the president defended white man Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, more vigorously than her. At the same time, Biden's staff are privately disappointed with Harris over self-inflicted controversies like her awkward laughter when asked about visiting the border by NBC's Lester Holt. She just can't stop cackling. She can't. On Sunday night, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, appeared to respond to the CNN report with a furious tweet insisting that Harris is a vital partner and a bold leader who has taken on key important challenges facing the country, from voting rights to addressing the root causes of migration to expanding broadband. But privately, Harris aides gripe that she's been set up to fail and handed a portfolio that is not commensurate with her historic status as the first woman of color to hold the vice president's office. Dick Cheney, the only vice president who actually ever had real power. They always boast about how they're first in the room, last in the room, whatever. But their job is to cut ribbons and attend the funerals of foreign dignitaries, too unimportant for the president to go to. I mean, what did she think? Did she think she was going to become a co-president with Biden? FDR's first vice president, John Nance Garner, famously described the vice president's job as being worth a pitcher of warm piss. And it really hasn't changed much. No, but wait, look at what's happening here. There is growing chatter in Democratic circles that Biden may decide not to run again, and talk of a successor has become a focus in the media. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has been thrust into the limelight by being handed control of the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure deal. The guy who was ridiculed for this fake picture of him and his husband in a hospital bed with the two children, which they had somehow procured. That fellow who was off the job during the supply crisis for 12 weeks? That guy? But it's all, you see, it's like a memo goes out. I don't know if any of you remember the journalist scandal. It's like a memo goes out. Nobody likes Kamala Harris anymore. Not that they did in the first place. It's Pete. Boy, that Pete, he's a wonder. This gay weasel is just, man, he's unstoppable. In response to the reports of mounting frustrations in Harris's inner circle, Harris spokeswoman Simone Sanders insisted that the talk amounted to pointless gossip. It is unfortunate that after a productive trip to France, in which we reaffirmed our relationship with America's oldest ally and demonstrated U.S. leadership on the world stage, and following passage of a historic bipartisan infrastructure bill that will create jobs and strengthen our communities, some in the media are focused on gossip, not on the results the president and the vice president have delivered, Sanders told CNN. Oh, some in the media focused on gossip, like these ridiculous stories about Donald Trump. Oh, some staffer yelled at some other staffer for playing Taylor Swift and told her to turn it off. Do you want to get fired? Aides say White House rushed to Buttigieg's defense, but left Harris out in the cold. For instance, when Buttigieg faced mockery from Fox News host Tucker Carlson and other conservative pundits for taking paternity leave for his newborn, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki hit out forcefully, defending Buttigieg as a role model. It's hard to miss the specific energy that the White House brings to defend a white man. Boo! Knowing that Kamala Harris has spent almost a year taking a lot of the hits that the West Wing didn't want to take themselves. Oh, I see. So they're going down the Jimmy Kimmel route here. That criticism of Kamala Harris is illegitimate because she is, one, a woman, and two, black. Well, kind of, sort of. Perhaps adding to the tension in that case is the Buttigieg's position as a likely challenger for the next open field presidential primary. As an openly gay man, Buttigieg would also win historic first status for the Democrats if he secured the nomination. As Transportation Secretary, Buttigieg has seen his political star rise dramatically with the passage of Biden's $1 trillion infrastructure package. It's like this same paragraph appears in every single story about Kamala Harris, the Washington Post. Harris and Buttigieg under the spotlight amid uncertainty over Biden's future. And similar story in the New York Post. It's just everywhere. Gay weasel Pete Buttigieg, he's just unstoppable now. You know who else we found out are all racists? Truck drivers. Yep. Truck drivers they're just the worst racists. Let's see. MSNBC, this is This is from Steve Watson at Summit News. MSNBC race baiter Tiffany Cross spent the weekend claiming that the trucking industry is made up of racist white men. In a segment on supply chain problems, Cross declared most of these truck drivers are people of color, and they talked about hearing some of the racism over the CB. This is, again, an industry populated by a lot of white men over the age of 55. Boo! This group of people overwhelmingly voted for Trump. Some people have talked about, aggressive truck drivers, cutting them off or not being helpful. So obviously, the more populated it is with people of color, I think you'll see less of that. Cross's guest, Pamela Day, owner and president of the Cross Country Truck Driving School, was brought on solely to make the claim that the trucking industry is racist. I think just what you're doing, getting myself as a black female out there and letting people know I drove for almost 8 years, and yes, ran into lots of racism. I think that Tiffany Cross would likely to be running into racism wherever she went. I think she's a magnet for it. And, okay, let's move on. Oh, no. Okay. Oh, Beto O'Rourke is in the news again. Does he spend a lot of time in tanning parlors? His name is Robert Francis O'Rourke, and it will be difficult for anyone to come up with a name more Irish than that, but he decided to reinvent himself as a Hispanic. And I'm looking at the picture of him on Wikipedia and comparing it to the picture in Texas Monthly, and this guy appears to be spending a lot of time in the tanning parlor, or perhaps he has a machine installed in his home. You remember when he ran against Ted Cruz? Again, he was unstoppable. Beto fever was sweeping the nation. Well, he lost that race, but apparently he believes himself to be indispensable to the people of Texas. And, okay, here we go. This is from Zero Hedge. The Centers for Disease Control says it has no record of people who are naturally immune transmitting the virus that causes COVID-19. The Federal Health Agency was asked during the fall by a lawyer on behalf of the Informed Consent Action Network for documents reflecting any documented case of an individual who, 1, never received a COVID-19 vaccine, 2, was infected with COVID-19 once, recovered, and then later became infected again, and 3, transmitted SARS-CoV-2 to another person when reinfected. SARS-CoV-2 is another name for the Chinese Communist Party virus, which causes COVID-19. People who recover from COVID-19 are also known as naturally immune. In a response dated November 5th and made public this week, the CDC says it does not have any documents pertaining to the request. The CDC confirmed to the Epoch Times that its Emergency Operations Center did not find any records responsive to the request. The agency declined to say whether any documentation had been found between November 5th and November 12th, directing the Epoch Times to file a Freedom of Information Act request for that information, which it did. You would assume that if the CDC was going to crush the civil and individual rights of those with natural immunity by having them expelled from school, fired from their jobs, separated from the military, and worse, the CDC would have proof of at least one instance of an unvaccinated, naturally immune individual transmitting the COVID-19 virus to another individual. If you thought this, you would be wrong. This is from Aaron Siri, a lawyer who sought the records on behalf of the network. The CDC's disclosure drew responses from several medical experts, including Johns Hopkins' Dr. Marty Makary, who said it underlined how little data the agency has released concerning the recovered. Makary called on the CDC to make public data on any reinfections that have resulted in hospitalization or death, with information on the patient's comorbidities or lack thereof. Not very transparent. Oh, look who's back in the news. America's medical saint, Dr. Anthony Fauci. COVID-19 cases are starting to climb again in select regions across the U.S. after stabilizing at a high level following this summer's Delta surge. A White House Chief Medical Advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, said Monday. His comments came just a day after the country reported a 7-day average of more than 82,000 new cases, up 11% from the week before, according to a CNBC analysis of data from Johns Hopkins University. Nationwide cases were down 57% last week from the Delta wave's peak this summer, but a jump of COVID patients in the Midwest and Northeast is fueling the sudden increase. Why not the South? Because, they're being dangerous there. Cases and hospitalizations have fallen sharply in the South. Oh, where the Delta wave hit earliest and harshest over the summer. Oh, okay. That's the explanation. Good to hear. It's always good to hear from the experts who, remember, are always right. This is funny. I suppose it's not funny if you live there. This is from Kane at Citizen Free Press. New Zealand flattened the curve on the wrong axis. New confirmed cases of COVID-19 in New Zealand, 7-day rolling average of new cases, and the graph goes like this, and then straight up, almost straight up. From October, less than 20 cases a day, and now to about 180 cases a day. Jacinda Ardern is the sad Muslim lady who is Prime Minister of New Zealand. Okay. So apparently the zero COVID, it's just not working out. Oh, and we have some news from Ontario, which is Canada's most populous province. This is from Cody Wilson at CP24. Ontario is reporting more than 500 new COVID-19 cases today, the highest single-day total reported on Monday since late September. Provincial health officials logged 552 new COVID-19 infections today, down from 666 Sunday, but up from 481 a week ago. Now, who is getting infected? These are very interesting numbers. Of the new cases confirmed today, 286 are in those who are unvaccinated, 23 are in people who are partially vaccinated, 212 involve those who are fully immunized, and 31 have an unknown vaccination status. Dr. Isaac Bogach, an infectious diseases specialist at Toronto General Hospital, said while waning immunity could be partially to blame for the uptick in breakthrough infections, it is still quite small. Still a quite small number of cases, considering about 75% of Ontario's population, including children who aren't yet eligible to be vaccinated, are fully immunized. Oh, okay. Unvaccinated people make up 52% of all new infections, despite the fact that they only represent about 25% of the population. Yeah, let's go back. Let's look at those numbers in a week or a month and see how they change. And there's a piece from Christopher Bedford at The Federalist. How COVID lockdowns handed global warming extremists the tools to crush freedom. We've rolled out the blueprint for a society that is nominally free, but willing to throw freedom away in a crisis. Well, freedom has become a bad word. It's only selfish people who use the word freedom now. And these people are terrorists, according to Susan Riley, and criminals, according to the CEO of Pfizer. The Glasgow Climate Conference wrapped Friday with so much progress. There was a joint pledge by President Joe Biden and an indifferent Chinese dictator to slow down the claiming change sometime in the next decade or so. There was a call from British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to get on and do it, whatever that means. There was even a column from the New York Times' Tom Friedman on how, after seeing all the protests and listening to all the leaders, he's feeling very, very energized and very afraid. It was great, refreshing, really. I loved it. Why? Because it felt like a return to normalcy. A few thousand completely clueless, feckless old men flying from all over the planet to babble on about saving the world, and maybe even catch a quick nap during the most boring of the mostly boring speeches. There was excitement, too. They pulled out all the stops, creepy 20-foot puppet shows, sobbing children completely convinced they're going to die unless every adult on the planet stops what they're doing and listens to their teenaged opinions, drum circles, even Peruvian flutes. It felt vintage, as if from a simpler time. But there's a major problem. Well, it might have felt like a return to normalcy. It wasn't. We're not going back to normal, at least not without a hard and vicious fight. Why not? Because the past 2 years have witnessed the very things that kept those stupid marches largely confined to just stupid marches. Our society's apparent decision to sacrifice liberty on the altar of fear and the triumph of timid technocrats over bold citizenry. This had been building behind the scenes, mind you, but with the excuse of COVID, it was ready to be revealed. Back in 2019, before the global shutdowns, there was a lot of internal debate within conservatism about which direction our society ought to go. Should we stick with our collective devotion to libertine individualism and cheap goods, as lawyers like David French preferred? Or should we move past the modern liberal consensus and turn to a more involved government that tries to actively reorder society toward the higher good, as Sohrab Ahmari, Tucker Carlson, and a few of us here at the Federalist proposed? Sohrab, Tucker, and the rest of us were viciously attacked for our heresy against the modern liberal order. How dare we stir up trouble and inflame feelings? We were ruining the club vibe, splintering party unity. We can't help people global markets have forgotten, and God, he's just a private venture. While we had this debate, however, global events and the left overtook us. Mary Harrington, an editor of the British magazine Unheard, puts it this way: the pandemic state of emergency shattered the consensus about individual freedom. Across the developed world, the liberal privileging of individual freedom has been replaced by a de facto acceptance that state power absolutely must be ordered to the common good, up to and including coercive measures where necessary. In other words, all politics is now post-liberal, unquote. Bedford continues, our government today is indeed far less constrained, more willing to take drastic action for the sake of what they believe is right. It's the inverse of what a number of us had hoped for. Active, yes, but on the wrong side of the good, and it's God. The transformation we've experienced has been so subtle and so sudden, and so dramatic that it's even reshaping our language. Take the word democracy. Democracy used to mean rule by the people. It meant a government where there are regular elections with multiple political parties. Today, democracy means something very different. It means rule by a narrow technocratic elite. Listening to every changing claim Tony Fauci utters, that's democracy. Put him on the cover of Rolling Stone. A little rebellion, some questions about vaccines or voter fraud or Black Lives Matter that aren't improved by CNN and company, that ain't democracy, that's misinformation, and it stays outside the Twitter. In all societies, there are people who feel entitled to build their own moral universes and compel us to obey their man-made constructs. It's for the collective good, they say, although suspiciously often the collective good seems to align with giving them the most money and power, status, and freedom, maybe even a ticket to Glasgow. COVID was the best thing to ever happen to these people. The panic over an unknown virus caused too many of us to rush to give up freedoms we once knew to be essential. The right to travel, for example, or the right to eat in a restaurant, the right to protest in public, and in many cases, the right to run a business and take care of our families, literally the right to say goodbye to our elders and bury our dead. Now COVID-19 is fading away, but with the precedent set, the leadership class would like to keep all these new powers they've gained. Turns out they're good for a lot more than just pretending to contain a virus. Wouldn't it be grand, our technocrats think, if they could turn the COVID-19 emergency into a permanent emergency over climate? The possibilities are limitless. Traveling, if we can lock you in your home to stop a virus, why can't we trap you there so you don't get in your gas-guzzling car or fly on a carbon-spewing airplane? Such wastefulness must be reserved for a select few, like the important leaders flying to international climate conferences. Remember the coverage of the early lockdowns when you could drive from end to end of New York City or Boston without an ounce of traffic? How good this is for the environment, they crooned. Seriously, articles talked about the upsides for Mother Earth. Even Friedman's perpetual wish that we become more like China was finally granted. Emergency powers über alles. Speaking of acting more like China, how about a public debate? Turns out when you're really, really sure you're right, you can just ban it. A science says sort of thing. Make no mistake, we did exactly this with COVID. Yes, and if you look at COP26 in Glasgow, you see how emboldened these people were. COVID set as a precedent. Now they can seriously get on with the work of destroying the world economy. Oh, it's been raining a lot in British Columbia, and there have been mudslides. There are mudslides every winter in British Columbia, but apparently now this is due to climate change. Yeah. Yep. Is there anything climate change can't do? Apparently not. This is from Chris Malore. At study finds holidays are about to get heated and politics aren't even the main issue this time. Nearly 2/3 of vaccinated Americans are banning unvaccinated family members from their holiday gatherings this year. A survey of 2,000 U.S. residents conducted by One Poll on November the 2nd examined how the COVID-19 vaccine has impacted people's relationships with their loved ones ahead of the holidays this year. According to the results, 2 in 3 correspondents feel they cannot go home for the holidays without getting vaccinated first. Of the 65% who are fully vaccinated, nearly 6 in 10, or 58%, have reportedly cut off family members who refuse to get the vaccine. Meanwhile, 63% don't feel comfortable inviting unvaccinated relatives to their parties. 72% of vaccinated respondents don't think they could ever get some of their family members to understand the importance of the vaccine. On the other hand, 14% of survey respondents don't plan to ever get the shot themselves. When asked about their decision, one respondent admits that they don't trust the vaccine, while another says they are concerned about side effects. One even believes the vaccine was rushed. Half of unvaccinated respondents, 49%, have stopped communicating with family members who don't understand why they refused the shot. These strained family dynamics may explain why 22% of unvaccinated respondents have so far been excluded from all family gatherings, including the holidays. Let's go back to the chat here. Oh, okay. Got to scroll up. Dave Chappelle. I read that he's been canceled from his high school. Kamala Harris is just gross, says British American. I don't know. She just doesn't seem like a normal person. Hello to Chad Chadson, our valiant moderator. Thank you for your service. Fox Day wrote a book called SJWs Always Project. It was mostly about Gamergate. Remember Gamergate? It turned out there were an awful lot of female gamers. Yeah. Like as if playing Candy Crush makes you a gamer. I'm not a gamer myself, but it just... it was decided that they had to be taken down. Okay. Okay. British American says Barack Obama's election was the tipping point to our descent into hell. The media cabal lost its mind in a tizzy at any criticism of their guy, which then made them go all in on their schemes to destroy Western civilization. Well, yeah. Here's a man. He seems fussy, fastidious, right? And he has this hulking bodybuilder wife. He's got 2 daughters, no sons. And the mother-in-law was imported into the White House. And the whole White House was run by another woman. There's just so much comedy there. But Saturday Night Live and everyone else decided, no, we can't have fun at the expense of Barack Hussein Obama. You know, we got used to that. You know, it wasn't until 2008 that we actually knew what his legal name was, which is Barack Hussein Obama II. So let's see. 7 years after 9/11, America elects a president called Barack Hussein Obama. Seems strange, doesn't it? Metal Mike says the experts are now saying the reason for all the breakthrough cases is because of high vaccination rates. Wait, what? Yes. Either every man-jack of the damn cabal is punished or civilization is over. It's that simple, says British American. Hello, thank you for your kind words, Dan Allison. Oh, Quachilango. All right. I mean, by any measure in any other epoch, Kyle would be honored, says Chokokin 666. And Dionysus says, I am blacklisted from teaching. For anyone interested in this kind of foreign policy intrigue, I'd strongly recommend the Scott Horton Show. He's been doing anti-war radio for nearly 20 years now. Excellent insights. Jokin 666 says the fact that people honestly view Kyle as a villain seems an epistemic issue and leads me to believe that we cannot reconcile. Kontiki Roulette says my doggy is stretched out on the bed with his ears back, enjoying Kevin's raconteur skills. Well, thank you for that. Brass Against. That's a band, is it? Oh, yes. Some singer of some band urinated on someone in a crowd. That happened in the 1990s, some college rock band. It's a strange thing to do. And hello to, what is this, Danielle McDougall? Pete went Klaus Schwab, Future Totalitarianism School, says Texas Feral Hog, who points out that Pete's dad is a famous Marxist. Abraham Lincoln nominated Salmon P. Chase to the Supreme Court as a means of getting rid of potential rival, says Denny McDougall. I don't think anyone is looking at Kamala Harris as a potential rival now. But Pete Buttigieg, I mean, the Democratic Party, they got a pretty weak bench. Herb Alpert did nothing wrong, says Don Willis. I was a big fan of Herb Alpert when I was a boy. In 1965 in America, he sold more records than the Beatles. That's how popular the Tijuana Brass were. Okay. And Ian Durham, it's a new name to me. Yes, there are a lot of aggressive truckers on the California roads. Care to guess who these drivers are? Hint, not white boomers. Honestly, wish I could drive a truck, says Quachilango. Run some heavy equipment, but not trucks all day long. No sleep, Tilbury's-Wood, PA. Hello, Midwits discover seasonality. No one else shocked. Okay, and moral outrage prophet. KMG needs a My Body pillow by the amount of pillows in view. Well, they come with the room. Actually, I'm sitting on one now. I'll explain why. I like my monitor to be at eye level. And when I put it on this desk in the hotel room, I was looking down on it, which is quite tiring. So I went down to Value Village and bought some piece of plastic, rectangular piece of plastic. I don't know what it's for. So it elevates the monitor, but it was too high. So I'm sitting on a pillow to raise myself. Moral Outrage Prophet says Fauci has the same voice as Joan Rivers. I'll have to consider that. Betty Page did nothing wrong, said Don Willis. And almost all the rebellious women in human history were cast out, says Brandon Smith. Brass Against appear to be a kind of novelty cover band, says My Trail of Disgrace. Brandon Smith says the matriarchy is the most susceptible to threats against safety and thus easy targets that must be strategically positioned into political power positions. And, okay, And we are now, oh yes, some good news. Well, hooray for Oklahoma. This is from the Washington Post. The Oklahoma National Guard has rejected the Defense Department's requirement for all service members to receive the coronavirus vaccine and will allow personnel to sidestep the policy with no repercussions. An order from the governor that could serve as a blueprint for other Republican-led states that have challenged Biden administration mandates. Brigadier General Thomas Mancino, appointed this week by Republican Governor Kevin Stitt as adjutant of the state's 10,000 National Guard soldiers and airmen, on Thursday notified those under his command that they are not required to receive the vaccine and won't be punished if they decline it. It's an extraordinary refusal of Pentagon policy by the general and follows Stitt's written request to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin seeking suspension of the requirement for Guard personnel in the state. We will respond appropriately, John Kirby, a Pentagon spokesperson, said of Stitt's letter. That said, Secretary Austin believes that a vaccinated force is a more ready force. That's why he has ordered mandatory vaccines for the total force and then includes our National Guard, who contributes significantly to national missions at home and abroad. The governor installed Mancino after having removed the state's prior adjutant, Major General Michael C. Thompson, who has advocated for his troops to get vaccinated against the coronavirus and last month publicized having received a booster shot. Carly Atchison, a spokesperson for Stitt, said Thompson's departure was unrelated to his stance on vaccine policy and that the governor had explored a change over the last few months. Thompson did not respond to messages seeking comment. He told the New York Times that he believed his ouster was politically motivated. There's not another reason for it, the general said. Overall, Republican resistance to vaccine mandates has intensified in recent weeks, with multiple GOP governors filing suit to stop the requirement for federal contractors and a Friday court ruling temporarily halting the administration's directive that private businesses employing more than 100 workers require inoculation or impose onerous testing guidelines. Oklahoma's objection to the Pentagon's directive would appear to open another pathway for states to challenge the president's order. Yes, very constitutional that order is. Perhaps someone can remind me of which clause in the Constitution allows the president to do this. Ted Cruz rips leftist chronic liar ex-CBS anchor Dan Rather on Twitter for saying federal court halting Biden's vaccine mandate was an attack on safety and welfare of the nation. Yes, and every so often we are reminded that Dan Rather is still alive. Now, let's look at a certain Substack written by a man whose initials are A.B., whose book Pandemia comes out in 16 days. Unlike England or Scotland or Israel or Germany or many other countries that have semi-functioning governments, the United States has no nationally reliable source of COVID or COVID vaccine data. Our famed Centers for Disease Control has turned out to be less famed than infamous. It has failed in every conceivable way since February 2020, some inconceivable ways too. Worse, in the months since Joe Biden staggered into the White House, the CDC has slipped from a mere incompetence into actively twisting science for its new political masters. In place of centralized national data, we have state health department reports. The states are probably about as competent as the CDC overall, but a bit less political, maybe. They also run their own immunization registries and are closer to the local hospital systems and coroners that report COVID deaths. So their 5 o'clock folly body count reports go through a little less truth destruction. And note to younger readers, body count doesn't mean what you think it means. During the Vietnam War, the United States military regularly reported its body counts, the number of Viet Cong guerrillas or North Vietnamese soldiers it had killed. These figures became infamous as the ultimate example of the way bureaucracies could release seemingly precise statistics that had no relation to reality. Reporters began to call the press briefings where they were discovered the 5 o'clock follies. And you may also know that Saigon is now called Ho Chi Minh City. The reason it's now called Ho Chi Minh City is that the United States lost the Vietnam War despite our incredibly advanced technology, which we insisted for years was enabling us to win the war. Do I need to extend this analogy further? The enemy gets a vote, whether that enemy is human or viral. So we are stuck with the state numbers, and the state numbers are all over the place, both literally and figuratively. Some states update their numbers weekly and are reasonably transparent, others not so much. For example, on November the 11th, Connecticut reported that 170 vaccinated people had died of COVID since February. But the fact that 170 is not a number, the state had reported a week before that 226 vaccinated people had died since February, which seems to imply that about 50 Connecticutians were resurrected last week. Que sera, sera. It's not like it's life and death, am I right? But stupid public health tricks aside, American data has a much bigger problem, and this one is not an accident. The amount of information about vaccine breakthrough cases states and the CDC have provided has decreased over the last several months. For example, until about a month ago, Oklahoma reported COVID hospitalizations and deaths among the vaccinated, including by the type of shot that they had received. Now, however, after months of being part of the report, that handy-dandy chart has gone bye-bye. Why? In this October 19th report, Oklahoma offered this explanation. At this time, we're currently working on refining the process for identifying breakthrough infections and reinfections. Once we have finalized this process, we will resume providing tables. And, let's hear about modeling. Bigger piece coming soon, but I wanted to share this. The Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, the University of Washington modelers, Bill Gates' pets, their motto almost as dumb as Neil Ferguson, but without the English accent, so not as good as getting publicity, has a new COVID forecast out for the winter. They now expect almost 1 million additional deaths from the end of October through March the 1st. But aren't the vaccines supposed to end the epidemic? About that. Rising COVID-19 numbers, according to the report, in the Northern Hemisphere are due to winter seasonality. 2, waning immunity for those vaccinated. 3, decreased mask use and increased mobility levels. This narrative's looking kind of shaky. Boris Johnson, can this man ever make a decision and stick to it? I see on 2 days ago, Operation Ramp Down leaked official COVID exit plan to dismantle key measures, including self-isolation, mass testing, and test and trace by early next year. But if we go to today's Daily Mail, and we find out that Boris is saying that maybe there won't be Christmas this year in Britain. There might have to be, another lockdown. Just, pick a side. Suicide bomber who died when his device blew up outside Liverpool Hospital is Syrian asylum seeker, 32, who was converted to Christianity at a cathedral he wanted to attack and was once arrested for carrying a knife. Diversity is the gift that keeps on giving. And let's have a look at lockdown skeptics. And from Sydney to Vienna, the rise of the unvaccinated underclass. In Australia, you can't get in the same car. Well, Australia is locking them down. Just 2 of the countries cracking down on the unvaccinated, write Paul Newkey and Jennifer Rigby in The Telegraph. I'm deeply ashamed of our country. Austria's greatest Olympian quits political role as lockdown for unvaccinated comes in. That would be Felix Gottwald. And, there's that chart again from New Zealand. Yes, Boris says he can't rule out Christmas lockdown. He said it's not completely off the cards and made a desperate plea for Britons to get their booster jabs. The PM, who appeared to be suffering from a cold, warned storm clouds of infection were gathering over Europe and forcing nations back into restrictions, which highlighted how the UK, quote, cannot afford to be complacent. And Tesco's vaccine pass Christmas advert receives over 1,500 complaints. Tesco's Christmas advert, which features Father Christmas, that's what they call Santa Claus in Britain, showing a COVID vaccine passport to border security in order to avoid quarantine when entering the country, has become the most complained about advert of the year. Australian care home residents may have died from neglect after staff were furloughed. Florida governor calls special legislative session to defeat vaccine mandates. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has called a special legislative session in which lawmakers will try to effectively outlaw vaccine mandates, whether they are imposed by private businesses or local governments throughout the state. In particular, the session will likely revolve around the discussion of 4 bills that would increase the fines on companies and government agencies which introduce mandatory vaccination measures. Negative vaccine effectiveness isn't a new phenomenon. It turned up in the swine flu vaccine. And let's talk about Megan Mertz. Megan Mertz is in trouble, potentially big trouble. I'll start with a piece from the New York Times. For Megan, an image rendered in a UK-US split screen. And there's a picture of her wearing an absurd dress to a Remembrance Day ceremony. When Prince Harry and his wife Meghan stepped out last week at a gala for veterans in New York City, the beaming, beribboned prince declared that he was living the American dream. That might be even truer of Meghan, who has restyled herself since leaving Britain last year as a philanthropist, multimedia entrepreneur, and outspoken campaigner for family leave rights. Even as they were taking Manhattan, though, Meghan was shadowed by the couple's old life in London. She was forced to apologize for erroneous statements she made in a lawsuit against a British tabloid, the Mail on Sunday, for violating her privacy by publishing a letter she had sent to her father. Meghan said it was a case of faulty memory, but the tabloids, who have been at war with the couple since before they abandoned Britain for Southern California, leapt on the admission. "Little Miss Forgetful," said the Sun, above an unflattering caricature of Meghan drawn from Little Miss, an English children's book series. Rarely has the contrast between Meghan's present and past lives been so stark. 9 months after she and Harry gave a sensational interview to Oprah Winfrey, in which Meghan accused the royal family of callous and racist treatment, she has reemerged in the United States as a formidable mix of A-list celebrity, business owner, investor, and social activist. Some speculate about a political future. That's exactly what California needs, a politician more hated than Kamala Harris. In Britain, however, Meghan remains a polarizing figure. She is admired by some, particularly the young, for having brought a breath of fresh air into the musty House of Windsor, but reviled by many others, not least the tabloids, which cite her misstatement as evidence of a broader pattern of duplicity and manipulative behavior. "The majority of people are fed up to the back of the teeth with them," said Penny Junor, a royal historian. "They said they wanted privacy, but then they never stopped looking for attention. And now, all these months later, we've had this discovery that she's been lying to the court or failing to remember." None of this particularly matters in the United States, Junor was quick to acknowledge. If anything, the split-screen images of the past week have vindicated the couple's decision to leave the realm behind. And yes. So, did you know that that Prince Harry, a ginger waster, is an expert on misinformation? Yes. Yes, he is. This is from Mark Dewell and Harry Howard from the Mail. Prince Harry issues fake news action plan. Duke of Sussex releases report from left-wing U.S. think tank designed to tackle, quote, avalanche of misinformation. The Duke of Sussex is a commissioner on disinformation with the Aspen Institute, based in Washington, D.C. He has helped to release a wide-ranging report on how to fight so-called fake news as part of his role. The 37-year-old royal revealed a list of 15 specific recommendations for leaders to consider adopting. The report calls for increasing social media transparency and proposals on social media platform immunity. It also refers to ideas for reversing the collapse of local journalism and the erosion of trusted media. Well, yes, you might want to look into why the media is not as trusted as it once was. Essentially, this is a call for censorship of social media. That experts, accredited experts, will determine whether claims or opinions should be allowed on social media. Yeah, experts like Prince Harry. And so who is a part of this panel? Well, Katie Couric. Yeah. Chris Krebs, Rashad Robinson, Marlon Blow. Oh, yes. Gary Kasparov. Yes, that's sinister, man. Catherine Murdoch of that family. Kate Starbird, Amanda Zamora. But let's get back to the question of perjury. Perjury is a very serious crime, and people have been sent, like Jeffrey Archer said, this is several years in prison for perjury. This is from the Harry Markle blog. Public appearances, photos, and PR while Knopf talks. Who can forget the dreadful stunt the duo pulled last year on Remembrance Sunday, but they seem to have done it again at the Salute to Freedom Gala at the Intrepid Museum held the 10th of November. The duo arrived with a film crew in tow because they need footage for their Netflix project. They have to look as if they are filming some content, or they may have to return some of the advance payments, and if that happens, some of the staff may not get paid for the rest of the year. We should also remember that poor Harry gets triggered by the flash of a camera, but somehow he managed to pose when cash or PR are involved. There were staged and nauseating poses for photos and footage for Archwell, and the museum appeared to have paid for a merry band of photographers too, in order to use the images for PR purposes. Harry has indeed sold his soul, along with his title and anything else his privilege allowed, including the death of his mother. Yes, people are furious about this depiction of his mother, the Princess of Wales, on Netflix. But no, Harry has remained silent about this. Now, Harry and Meghan are suing the Mail on Sunday. And he's living the American dream, he says. He's lived in America for all of 2 years. He used this term, Brits. No, they're Britons, Harry. Brits indeed. I was rather surprised to see Peter Hitchens in the Mail on Sunday say, a couple of weeks ago, that he's done with the Windsors, that he's still a monarchist, but the Windsors aren't fit for purpose. That was the conclusion that the novelist and historian A.N. Wilson came to, several decades ago, when he wrote his book about the Princess of Wales. Now we have the members of the royal family bleating about how governments, the world, must do this or that over climate change. That is not their job. It is not their job at all. And given how much, well, I'll explain the perjury, okay? There was a book by a fellow named Scobie that was published about the couple, and Meghan and Harry both claimed in sworn statements that they did not provide any information for the book. Now we find out they provided a lot of information, and were in contact with the author many, many times. Her lawyers have little to go on except for, oops, I forgot that I wrote the emails and had meetings about providing material for the book. Her hand was stuck in the cookie jar while she protested it wasn't her as Harry chomped on the cookies, leaving a trail of crumbs. She didn't press delete, but claims that the Kensington Palace communications team may have deleted the emails for security. If she's going to spin some yarns where the dog hit the delete button or ghost in Kensington Palace clicked delete, I'd be more inclined to believe those stories than the wife's attempt to account for the so-called missing emails. And the writer of this blog who describes himself as a monarchist, is pretty much fed up with the Windsors too, because people have been demanding that they be stripped of their titles, and it's continuing embarrassment to Britain and to the royal family. But it appears that Queen Elizabeth is just simply doesn't have it. She doesn't have it in her to cut them off. And, oh yes, I'm sure you all aware of the singer who goes by one name, Adele. And she was interviewed by Oprah Winfrey. And there's just been a barrage of stories about this. This is from the Washington Post. The foremost personal revelations from Oprah's interview with Adele, from her divorce to wait to her new boyfriend. So here we have this English woman who's a close personal friend of Megan Mertz and her husband, by the way. So after she lost all this weight, turns out she's a good-looking woman. She's rich, she's famous, she has millions of adoring fans, but her life has just been a misery. I wonder about this. Is this an attempt to forestall envy? Oh, yes. No, don't hate me because I'm pretty and blonde and successful and rich. Oh, my life is it's just been so terrible. In between tracks, the camera cut to Adele sitting in Oprah Winfrey's rose garden as the talk show host asked about her divorce, her much-discussed weight loss, her relationship with famed sports agent Rich Paul, and more. Here are the foremost personal revelations from the interview, her final days with her estranged father, the guilt she feels over her divorce and her son, how she feels about fan reactions to her weight loss, and her new relationship. Super agent Rich Paul, an accurate description, is the agent who represents LeBron James and other NBA superstars. I don't want to hear about people like this complaining about their lives. It's unseemly. Unseemly as what? Roger Daltrey bitching about the Rolling Stones? That they're, just a blues band, a pub band. Wow. That's we had similar from Paul McCartney, a week or two before that. I don't know what would lead these old men to express such bitterness again after so many years. This is pretty amusing. I know it's shocking, a shocking story. This is from B.H. Visha Patel. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Visha? A BBC chief told Alphabet People staff that they will hear things they do not personally like, and they have to get used to that. It has been reported. Oh, no. During a meeting with the corporation's Pride Network, the broadcaster's head of news, Fran Unsworth, not Francis, but Fran Unsworth, told employees they must get used to hearing opinions they disagreed with. It came as she responded to questions that implied people should not come across views they disliked during a Zoom call Friday. Unsworth, who was set to leave her position in January, also told staff that these were the stories the corporation told to the public, and they could not walk away from the conversation. The meeting was also extremely hostile to Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, not Timothy, but Tim, who spoke of his concerns that Alphabet People staff were leaving the corporation over its policies during the Zoom call, the Sunday Times reports. Friday's meeting came after the BBC announced that it had become the latest organization to ditch the Alphabet People charity Stonewall's Diversity Champions program. Diversity Champions is a program where companies sign up and pay for advice from Stonewall on how to create an inclusive environment for Alphabet People workers. But it has been recently mired in controversy after its chief executive, Nancy Kelly, claimed gender-critical beliefs, the beliefs that a person's biological sex cannot be changed, were like anti-Semitism. A source told the Sunday Times that Unsworth told staff, You'll hear things you don't personally like and see things you don't like. That's what the BBC is, and you have to get used to that. Another person said Fran was totally calm but determined about it. She was reacting to questions from the network that implied people shouldn't come across views they disliked. But he was told by one employee that he was not in a position to make decisions on this issue because he's not trans. The BBC spokesperson told the Mail the BBC has regular staff meetings and this meeting was constructive and useful. Last week, the BBC confirmed it was withdrawing from Stonewall's Diversity Champions program. A BBC spokesperson says the BBC is fully committed to being an industry-leading employer on alphabet people inclusion. We are proud of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans colleagues and support them to have fulfilling careers at the BBC. Is this the first time in their lives that these people have ever been told no? Because from the reaction, it would seem so. And we see a split in the alphabet people community in Britain with a new LGB group being formed. And it's always surprised me. They were so quick to add the T. What does being homosexual have to do with wanting to have sex with a person of the same sex? I don't see the connection at all. It seems to be a category error to me. Oh, yes, mermaids. Why is Mermaids promoting breast binding at events for young people? This is Debbie Hayton in The Spectator. Mermaids is arguably the most influential charity focusing on transgender rights in the UK. It claims to have been supporting transgender, non-binary, and gender-diverse children, young people, and their families since 1995, and has been at the forefront of key policy changes affecting transgender people in this country. Today, however, the charity is distinctly evangelistic. This approach worries me greatly. As a teacher, I know how impressionable young people can be. I think it is deeply irresponsible to suggest, as mermaids do, that children have a gender identity that can differ from the sex that was so-called assigned at birth. Yes, and they're promoting breast binding. And she comments, this is a horrifying revelation. Binding is never completely safe. Breast tissue is not meant to be compressed, and the practice can cause problems that range from chest and shoulder pains and shortness of breath to dizziness, respiratory infections, and fractured ribs. One large study found that over 97% of women surveyed reported at least one negative outcome from breast binding. Girls may be putting their health at risk, but this did not appear to worry those at mermaids. Instead, watching these young people return from the breast binding session made the bloggers, quote, queer heart sore, unquote. It's just a commonplace now that you come across stories like this. I mean, it would have been unthinkable. You came across this story like 10 years ago, or perhaps even 5 years ago. Oh, I don't understand this. I'm sorry, no. Nothing in this story makes sense. Why would we be encouraging young women to squash their breasts? This story, I guess, is a couple of weeks old, but this is from the Mercury News. Billionaire insists on windowless rooms in UCSB Dormzilla. Charlie Munger is paying for it, and he's ignoring the criticism. Munger is bankrolling the design of a massive dormitory at the University of California, Santa Barbara. The $1.5 billion project comes with a major catch. 94% of the dorm's bedrooms are in the interior of the building and have no windows. A consulting architect on the university's design review committee quit in protest of the project in a resignation later obtained by CNN Business. The basic concept of Munger Hall as a place for students to live is unsupportable from my perspective as an architect, a parent, and a human being, California architect Dennis McFadden wrote in the letter. In the letter, he said Munger Hall doesn't reflect the beachfront location as an integral part of campus culture and identity. Even the rooftop courtyard looks inward and may as well be on the ground in the desert as on the 11th floor on the coast of California, McFadden wrote. In addition to being Warren Buffett's right-hand man, Munger is an amateur architect. He has no formal education in the field. Of McFadden's departure, he said, when an ignorant man leaves, I regard it as a plus, not a minus. He's just plain wrong. He donated $200 million to UCSB, of which his grandson is an alumnus, to fund the dorms with the caveat that his designs are followed. He wanted the dorm rooms to be tiny and windowless to encourage residents to spend more time outside in the common areas, meeting other students. Does anyone think that that is going to be the result? I suspect the result is that they're going to go crazy. They're going to go crazy there. And it's been known for quite some time that you really don't want to live higher than 6 stories from the ground because your lizard brain keeps telling you that you're going to fall to your death. And okay. Oh, let's talk about Succession. I'll be moving on to Music Monday shortly. My friend who lives in New York City said that it was a meh episode. Last night, episode 5, season 3, Retired Janitors of Idaho. I thought it was quite entertaining, actually. And I don't know. Do people like Shiv? Again, your name is Siobhan, but they call her Shiv. And of course, a Shiv is an improvised knife. And of course, that's obvious. But the person who writes the write-ups, Roxana Haddadi for the AV Club, I thought, am I the only person who has noticed this? So I was pleased to see this. One of my favorite recurring motifs in this series is the gigantic food spreads that get placed out for family meetings and work events. Remember all that thrown out lobster and seafood at the Summer Palace, and how no one ever seems to eat but Greg. He's got that real intern who doesn't know where his next meal is coming from approach to snacking. And I guess, we had a good assessment from Connor. Roman's a knucklehead, Shiv's a fake, Kenny's screwy. Yeah, I think that is accurate. Tom is spiraling downwards. We found out last night that his wife is determined not to bear him a child. And his behavior, many people were calling his behavior creepy. Talking to your wife about, optimum time, for sex in order to have a child. She's no spring chicken, Shiv, You're not getting any younger. And I don't know. It was sad. She's a bad wife. But so now we have Hope Davis on the show as Sandy, the daughter of Sandy, who was a man. I don't know. It was pretty funny to me because he's afflicted with syphilis and he's pretty close to the grave. But apparently he's still, in charge of this block of voting shares. And she kept putting her face up to him to hear what he was saying. And of course, he could be saying, etc. He's clearly not there. I don't know. We seem to be running out of people who are, physically capable of doing their jobs. Logan Roy forgot to take his medication for his urinary tract infection and went off his head, thinking there was a dead cat underneath his chair and calling people by the wrong names. I've seen this. I've seen this in old people, urinary tract infection and its connection to insanity. I thought that Kendall looked very foolish, deciding to take the stage at the shareholders meeting. And no, he's not doing himself any favors. My company hurt all these people. Oh, when I knew about it, he hasn't admitted that. Oh, I knew about it quite some time ago, but did nothing and congratulated Greg, for what he did. This is a conspiracy we're talking about. But no, he's determined to present himself to the world as a hero. I go back and forth on Kendall, feeling sorry for him. But, in the first season, remember, he was told he could walk away from Waystar Royco with $500 million. Now, I know that's not a billionaire. That's only half a billionaire. But it is difficult, for most people to understand just how much money $500 million is. Nope, but he decided to stay. And let's go to the chat. I don't know, thinking about these complaints about the Rolling Stones. Did the Beatles or the Who ever do a song as good as Sympathy for the Devil or Paint It Black? And I could name many other songs. And the chat, here we go. Orca Yoga Pants Cycle, says Red Sulfur. Whoa, don't go so far, KMG, just a passing thing. Oh, Hindus say we were in the Kali Yuga. How about the Kamala Yuga? If Rittenhouse had killed his attackers with his fists, says Buddy, I'm sure he could have avoided this trial. The term progressive is nauseating, says Red Sulfur. I can understand Peter Hitchens losing hope. Everything seems to be going down, says Ogan's Iron. My Trail of Disgrace asks KMG, have you seen I Hypocrites You Can't Stop Progress edits? Lots of black-pilling insanity, difficult to watch. No, I haven't, but I will check it out. Tex has some straight talkers. Who do you pity more, Tom or Greg? Greg's a mystery, He's talking last night talking about suing Greenpeace because his grandfather has made it clear that he is disinheriting him, which turns out that the Greg was right for sticking with Logan and not his grandfather. He wants to be compensated for his role. We still haven't really seen how much evidence he has and how damning it is. I guess I feel more sorry for Tom because of his betrayal by his wife. Okay. Working up some hot cocoa and toasted bagels soon, says Red Sulfur. KMG lives on the 7th floor. No, I live on the 2nd floor, actually. DNA says, KMG, do you have a list of all the books and movies you have covered? No, I do not, and I know I should make one. So that's a long-term project. Red Sulfur says, I feel for Kyle. Imagine sitting there and getting character assassinated by a couple of rich lawyers. And Geez, he style. Hello, Mermaid says, certainly gives a rude crying game narrative to the unsuspecting. Rosenbaum was convicted of abusing 5 minors, points out Red Sulfur. Yeah, this connection of Antifa with pedophilia is disturbing. It's not really all that surprising. Let's talk about Beck Hansen. His father's Canadian, you know. Yeah, Canadians are always saying things like that. As I said, last week, Beck Hansen's grandfather was a Presbyterian minister who was transferred to, I think, Pittsburgh in 1950. David Campbell, Beck's father, has worked with a lot of people. In fact, he's been in the music game for a very long time. He played on Carole King's Tapestry record, which one of the greatest selling records of all time, more than 25 million copies sold. He's worked with Marvin Gaye, Bill Withers, Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, Bon Jovi, Metallica, Paul McCartney, Radiohead, Jessie J, Tim McGraw, Adele, Ricky Martin, Barbra Streisand, and Miley Cyrus. He's also a film composer. And of course, he does the string arranging and conducting on many of Beck's records. So Beck is born in 1970, and he's a weirdo. And it is my position that the most influential pop stars have been weirdos. David Bowie was certainly a weirdo, and Bob Dylan certainly a weirdo. And of course, one could name many others. So he is called the slacker idol. He does not like this term. He said, I once saw an interview, he said, slacker my ass. I'm talking about how hard he worked to get where he is. He seems to have had a strange, unsettled childhood. I don't talk of great poverty in Los Angeles. And living in Mexican-dominated parts of the city where he was mocked for his whiteness. Güero, they called him, white boy or whitey. And he wrote a song about it, Que Onda Güero. And he is not even a college graduate. And he decided he was going to be a folk singer, which is a kind of a strange decision to make, circa 1985. Of course, if you Beck appeared on Futurama, and he was very good on Futurama, where we were shown the Bectionary and the rhyming Bectionary, and he talks about that song "Devil's Haircut." And he says, "What's that song about?" Yeah, so it's nice to know that he can make fun of himself. And his early records, they're strange. They're singular. I think that would be the best way to describe them. Lo-fi, definitely. Remember lo-fi? Golden Feelings came out of cassette in 1993, Stereopathic Soul Manure. And then he hit gold with Mellow Gold. He was on a record label called Bong Load. And then the David Geffen Company got involved, and which led to a fight over subsequent records, because Bong Load thought they had the rights to release Beck records, and David Geffen Company decided, we have made this fellow a star, and we're not going to let you little pissant company release his albums. How many hits has Beck had, on the radio? I guess one, which would be Loser, which came out in 1994 and reached number 10 on the Billboard charts. I guess he had tapped into something in the American psyche. It's been pointed out that Beck appeared not long after the suicide of Kurt Cobain. The single before Loser is called MTV Makes Me Want to Smoke Crack, which there are many different versions of. And it's quite amusing, that song, actually. Is Beck a rapper? I suppose you could call him that. I don't know. He seems less rap than, say, the Beastie Boys. But, of course, the Beastie Boys have pretty strong, heavy metal influence as well. Now, those were quite different days in the music industry. Sampling You know, it's also been pointed out that, well, Beck has pointed out that his real breakthrough album, Odelay, which came out in 1996, it would be impossible to make today because there are so many samples on it. Odelay was produced by the Dust Brothers, John King and Michael Simpson, who, of course, worked with and radically reshaped the sound of the Beastie Boys. And Odelay is, to me, quite a thrilling record. But again, you know, it's after you hear, say, them singing that Dylan song, It's All Over Baby Blue. It's, of course, Van Morrison's band from Belfast. And it's, I guess, Jackass, that song, it's, you know, which it's them's version of It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. So this was sort of like the Wild West, you know, sampling then. And after several lawsuits, including one that Steely Dan was involved in, they become frightened of sampling because outrageous amounts of money are frequently asked for, you know, a few seconds or, you know, just a note or a yell, something like that. There was a deluxe version of Odelay that came out a few years ago, and it just, Beck is referred to as eclectic, and that's true. The type of stuff that he has done, again, it's just all over the place. And of course, he's a multi-instrumentalist. He's pretty good at all sorts of instruments, maybe not so much on drums, but he built a band around himself that played with him for many years, including Roger Manning Jr., and who was with Jellyfish, of course, and also guitarist, of the original guitarist for Jellyfish in his band, Joey ORourke, on drums. And you can find a show that Beck did in Nashville, the Ryman Auditorium, the whole thing on YouTube. And he's a very, very entertaining performer. I think maybe my favorite of his albums is the one that came out after Odelay, Mutations, which was the first of his records to be produced by Nigel Godrich of Radiohead fame. And he started tapping into a deep vein of melancholy on that record. Midnight Vultures is his R&B record, and I don't like it. And I don't think that Beck likes it too much either. He said that he wants to, try that subject again. It seems to me, I know this is a weird thing to say about Beck. It seems to me kind of like a cynical goof, but some would say that his real breakthrough is the 2002 album Sea Change, which he wrote after he broke up with his longtime girlfriend, after he found out that she had been cheating on him. And it is 52 minutes of unrelenting sadness. It really is quite overwhelming. And you see the influence on Sea Change, how much influence Serge Gainsbourg had on him. And I suppose it made people look at Beck differently. Of course, Beck worked closely with Serge Gainsbourg's daughter, Charlotte Gainsbourg. Her first record was written by Air, and her second record was written by Air, and her third record was written by Beck. The first one is called 555. Came out in 2006, produced by Nigel Godrich, and it is one of my very favorite records. The music by Air, and the words by Jarvis Cocker of Pulp, and Neil Hannon, the Irishman, from the Divine Comedy, the record that he produced and plays all over. This IRM, which is the French abbreviation for MRI. Gansberg had suffered a very serious brain injury while swimming, and it sounds a lot different than 555. Although Beck, of course, has worked with Air as well. So you have all these people playing with each other's bands. Beck appears on several tracks on the second or third Air record. It's pretty funny, actually. I like Air very much, and I sometimes wish that they had a vocalist. They've used various vocalists, including Beck. And we see Beck has continued to 2005. We have Huero, which the first track is called E-Pro, and it just has a monster guitar riff on it. And it's very strange. There is a bonus track called Send a Message to Her, which is kind of Paul McCartneyan in the way that there's enough material in this song for about 4 or 5 songs. And it's all in one song that's 4.5 minutes long. And for the life of me, I cannot imagine why it was left off the album. It's that good, Of course, we see with Beck something that I'm not all that fond of not being any definitive versions of songs. Oh, we're just going to have remixes and remixes and remixes. Well, which one am I supposed to listen to? That said, there's a remix by John King of Where It's At called Lloyd Price Express, which you can find on YouTube. And it incorporates a guitar figure, which significantly improves the song. Of course, Beck followed Huero with Huerolito, which is a remixed version of his album. And we got Boards of Canada there, Air in there, Diplo, and others. The Information, another Nigel Godrich produced album. I really quite like that as well. I also like Beck likes to make, he said, many famous videos for his songs, but homemade videos. He likes to do that as well. And on the video for E-Pro, which is, it's really quite a dazzling video, he injured himself, suffered a neck injury, which put him out of action. The video is by Shinola, and it put him out of action for quite some time. And I guess he was feeling a case of the sads. Modern Guilt is it's quite a sad record. It is co-produced by Danger Mouse, aka Brian Burton, who's an exceedingly talented young man. So it's 6 years between Modern Guilt and Morning Phase, which of course led to the famous altercation with Kanye West. Yeah, how come Beyonce hasn't gotten her 57th Grammy? He just made a total fool of himself. But I don't know, when you're talking about Kanye West and you say things like made a total fool of himself, I don't think that Kanye West has any idea, any understanding of what would actually count as foolishness, And his last 2 albums, Colors and Hyperspace, they represent a big change. They're a lot more minimalist. In fact, Beck Hansen, Greg Kurstin did colors, and it's okay. Yeah, we can play all the instruments, so we don't need anyone else. And it's, I think there's a change in the last two albums, in an attempt for his music to be more contemporary. That is to say, to sound more like the records which you hear on the radio. He collaborated with Pharrell Williams on Hyperspace, and working with different producers, all sorts of people. And he broke up his band, hired a new one. Jason Faulkner is the guitarist, who's also played bass for with Air for some time. And Jason Faulkner was in Beck's band for many years and appears on a great many of his records, including on one track on Hyperspace. One of the reasons I like Beck is because he's quite often funny, and I don't know if humor is not particularly appreciated in the music business these days, or so it seems to me. But again, Beck is a skinny, blonde-haired white man who likes to rap and make people laugh. And I think he's had quite a remarkable career. He's covered David Bowie, Diamond Dogs, good version of that. The Corgis, Everybody's Gotta Learn Sometime, which is a beautiful version of that song. So those are my thoughts about Beck. Okay. Because one's got a weasel and the other's got a flag. Choking on the splinters. I love that line. Quachalangua says Beck is a jokester. Kevin, what do you think of Weird Al? I like Weird Al. I don't know. He's a funny guy. I like that movie he made, UHF. I think it's underrated. I gave Colors a lot of play. Hyperspace didn't get into it. Says, geez, he stole. Should upload some mixes to Mixcloud, says Metal Mike. Playing the piano well is a very difficult skill, and once that skill is learned, it's like riding a bike that can easily be lost if you don't constantly practice. Yeah, that reminds me of Glenn Gould. Glenn Gould used to claim that he never practiced. Come off it, man. Come off it. Yeah, we know you're some sort of mysterious Superman, but you don't practice the piano. There's something ridiculous about a 5-foot Mexican threatening you with physical harm for simply suggesting you wear a mask on a public bus, said Red Sulfur. How good at playing various instruments is Johnny Greenwood, Radiohead? Well, quite good, actually. Including instruments that nobody plays anymore. Like Air quite a bit too, says Gamion. Beefcake pantyhose, says Yo Mama. Yeah, the cocaine nose jobs. Put your hands on the wheel, let the golden age begin. Yeah, I don't want to read that anymore. It's just too sad. It is too sad. Soy un perdedor. Yes, I'm a loser in Spanish. Eminem's My Name is sampled from the 1975 song I Got The by Labi Cifra. Okay, that's it for today. Be back on the air tomorrow. Coming up on the show this week, on Thursday, Theater Thursday, Peter Brook's 1963 adaptation of William Golding's Lord of the Flies. I rewatched it last week, and it was just as powerful as I had remembered it to be. And on the book club, I'm going to be talking about a book by Graham Thompson about murder songs, and it's called I Shot a Man in Reno. Johnny Cash was once asked if he shot a man in Reno, What's he doing at Folsom State Prison? And Johnny Cash says, that's what they call poetic license. And next week, this should be fun, November 22nd, I'm going to talk about Disco Demolition Night, July the 12th, 1979, at Comiskey Park in Chicago. As I like to say, the last time the white working class of America was allowed any say about the direction of popular culture. They hated disco, and they wanted the whole world to know about it. And you can see a reference to it in Whit Stillman's film, The Last Days of Disco. It's just, hey, in Chicago, they're all doing what everyone's thinking. Yeah, it turns out we hate disco too. Of course, disco was subsequently renamed dance music. This woman I used to work with, she asked me if I like New Order, and I said, oh, I love their catchy disco tunes. And she said, they're not disco. What does it matter what you call them? She seemed to think so. I will be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Bad Brains, Thoughts, Chogan 666. I don't know them well enough to have much comments about them. So if you would like to make a donation to this live stream, which I could very desperately use at this time, my PayPal account is linked to Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. Once again, Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. If you are in Canada, donations to the live stream may be made directly via Interac at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And as always, I leave you with this. In these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear viewers and listeners, manage to forge a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.